Welcome to this talk, An Introduction to Wellness. This is part of our Wellness Week here in the Children's Emergency Department at the Bristol Royal Hospital for Children. My name is Dan Magnus. I'm a consultant in paediatric emergency medicine, and I'm a strong advocate for wellness. We simply cannot care for our patients if we cannot care for ourselves. So, what exactly is wellness? The definition I like is wellness is an active process through which people become aware of and make choices towards a more successful existence. This definition describes a shift from unconscious living, where you do not really think about your health until you have a problem or experience symptoms, to conscious living, where you are actively making healthy choices to promote your success and well-being. The factors that contribute to our wellness, or can be detrimental if not taken care of properly, are highly individual, of course, but there are a number of factors that will commonly affect many of us. Our physical health features prominently how we care for our physical bodies and the effects that ill health can have. But what about our mental health? Such a problem for us in medicine, under-recognised, often neglected, but it is vital to be conscious of how our mental health is and to address this if problems arise. What about managing shifts and the stress of work? Managing night shifts in particular can be difficult. We work in a difficult profession with many and varied stressors. And night shifts can be a particular problem, and this needs consideration and strategies to help ensure that this way of working does not harm us. We will be looking at night shifts and sleep hygiene in a little bit more detail as part of our Wellness Week tomorrow. Nutrition is a real issue and a really important one, and unhealthy eating habits plague us in emergency medicine. From what we eat, whether it's sweets for dinner, or how we eat, perhaps not eating at all or just snacking. Nutrition is vital for keeping us physically healthy, but also for keeping us well in a broader sense. When, for example, did you last sit down with your family or loved ones for a meal, or with your colleagues for that matter? I am particularly guilty. Exercise. Now, there are multiple benefits of exercise that most of us are aware of, but it's worth just remembering that for our physical, mental, and spiritual selves, exercise can be really, really important and can be a big help. But time can, of course, be an issue, and fitting exercise into our busy routines is not always easy. I've listed financial fitness in quotes because very few people are working long shifts in hospital because of the outstanding Christmas bonuses and company car. Money, mortgage, bills can all be a source of stress and can damage our wellness. We need to be conscious of this and find mechanisms for making us resilient to this. What about personal and family plans? With the pressures of work, are you finding enough time to be with your family, to play, to nurture relationships with your loved ones, to be attentive to your personal life? This is key to wellness and must not be neglected. And spiritual nourishment, purpose, future, things that in the UK we're not always very good about talking about, but do you have any time to think about your place in the world, your spiritual or religious beliefs? Your sense of purpose or what the future might bring? Are you planning or looking for something more? Giving yourself this time and space can support your wellness and contentment. And career plans. Or what about simply where your career is going? Progression and career fulfillment and satisfaction do not often happen all by themselves. We need to be conscious of these and create the space to think about them. Even if it is just developing a sense of well-being about where you are at in the present and all of the positive things that your job and career actually entail in the here and now. So my question to you is, could this be you? It's 8:30, Tuesday morning, you've just finished an overnight shift and completed handover. It was a busy shift with one very unwell child who went to PICU. You still have some notes to write and don't expect to leave for another half an hour. You shiver as you realise how cold you are. you haven't eaten except for a bowl of pasta before work and a handful of sweets at 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't actually remember drinking anything. You reach for another sweet to keep your energy levels up, and you remember that you've got a 30-minute drive home. There are many things that we could discuss that relate to wellness from this situation, but let's just consider 4. The effects of fatigue. What does being tired do to your body and your mood? To say nothing of your ability to look after patients and yourself. We need to be conscious of this, and we need to pay much more attention to devising strategies to help us with being tired or to prevent becoming so tired in the first place. What about the risks of driving? We commonly drive home after night shifts, but this needs consideration. Is it safe for you to drive? Are there alternatives? Do you need to nap before driving? Cups of coffee and windows down are not necessarily the solution. What about nutrition and hydration? Are there ways of ensuring that you eat and drink better at work, particularly during night shifts? And how are you eating at home? And what are you eating? And then, of course, the emotional effects of work. How was your shift, really? Emotionally, how was it for you? Do you need to talk about what happened with anyone, either before going home or at another time in the future? Glossing over distressing cases can cause problems in the future. All too often, we let the various stresses and strains of work and shifts pass silently and subconsciously. But there can be benefits to being mindful of how our bodies and minds are experiencing what they're experiencing, so that we can try to put things in place to help ourselves. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow with some of the material that's coming from some very important work from Imperial College in London. So is there a bigger problem? Well, the answer is yes. A number of articles and studies have looked at burnout in medicine, and especially in emergency medicine. We know that there are systemic problems that need to be addressed, and there has been good coverage of this as recently as in the July edition of the BMJ. But in the meantime, we have the potential to take better care of ourselves and of each other in a very active and conscious way to prevent burnout and to keep ourselves healthy. Thinking about this in terms of wellness in a more holistic way is a really good way to do this, I would say. So what about, for example, simply surviving an ED rota? One of our registrars recently told me that it would be good to talk about this more openly with every new group of trainees that started. Well, I guess I've got 3 points to make. The first is that I think it's really important to admit that it can be hard being on an emergency department rota and being an emergency medicine trainee. And it's really important to talk to somebody if you're struggling. It's important to think of ways to come down after a shift, particularly night shifts, but any shift. So exercising, meals, art classes, for example. Going for a breakfast after night shifts is a particular favourite with one of our current trainees. These can all be important ways to try and diffuse the stress or to give yourself some time to reflect on the 8 or 10 hours that you've just experienced. And then doing things that make you happy, and in particular keeping them going. If you were a really passionate painter or sculptor or athlete before starting a new rota, it's really important to try and keep these going, because in time they will keep you really happy and ensure that your wellness is well looked after. I've written there, give yourself some self-CBT, and what I mean by this is, even if you don't feel like going for that run that you thought you were going to do, sometimes it can be important just to force yourself into doing things that overall are likely to bring you happiness or health. So what are my top 4 general tips for wellness? Firstly, make sure that you create a work-life balance that is right for you. We pay lip service to this a lot, and of course it is highly individual. But ask yourself, have I got the balance right for me in my life? And if the answer is no, then it is important to try to address this. Secondly, make healthy choices. And this means doing your best to make the right choices for your physical and mental health whenever you can. If I've not had anything to drink all day at work because I've been rushed off my feet, maybe a glass of water rather than a glass of wine might be the healthier and better choice for what to pour into a glass when you get home in the evening. These choices also apply to how and what we eat, choices around social activities, around what we spend our money on, what we spend our time doing, our relationships, our families, for example. Thirdly, manage your stress. And managing stress means first trying to develop insight into whether you are feeling or experiencing stress, and then trying to develop strategies or create mechanisms for reducing stress. This may be altering the source of stress itself, such as changing working hours or patterns, or trying to improve a relationship that is causing stress. But some stress is difficult to reduce directly, and so attention can be focused on how to manage it. The stress of a busy shift may feel better by going for a run or talking it through with somebody. So be active in employing these as strategies regularly for helping to manage stress. And lastly, access support and treatment if needed. Medical professionals are notorious for accessing support or help. If your physical or mental health is problematic, then seeking help early is vital. And if you don't know what help you need or where to access it, then talking to colleagues, friends, family, your GP, your occupational health department, for example, are all options. And we'll be listing some really helpful resources for where to find help later in the week. Remember, health is a state of body, wellness is a state of well-being. It's worth remembering this, that wellness is about much more than our physical health, and many of us might be healthier, happier, and more successful in our working and personal lives if we paid more attention to it. There are some useful links from both the American College of Emergency Physicians as well as our own Royal College of Emergency Medicine, and the links are listed here. They're well worth looking at, and there are plenty of more general wellness resources out there as well. This talk has been put together as part of the Bristol Children's Emergency Department Wellness Week for emergency medicine trainees as part of the EMTA First Wellness Week, the Emergency Medicine Trainees Association. Thank you very much for your time, for watching and listening. Please look after yourself, and maybe more importantly still, please remember to look after each other.